Good morning. This is Anna Malia from North East Animal Rights. We have Robbie Lockie, who is the director and co-founder of Plant-Based News Today. We are talking to him as part of our Saturday Spotlight series of interviews with high-profile animal rights activists and vegans. So welcome, Robbie. Thank you very much for doing this.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here.
Lovely. So without further ado, we'll just go straight into the questions, if that's okay with you.
Of course.
So in the process of researching for our interview, is obviously, well, a lot of us are long-term followers of plant-based news as well. I know that you were struggling with your health as a meat eater, and you were looking at healthier ways to eat and live. And you talked to Joey Carbstrong about having a spiritual moment when you held your neighbour's dying cat and realised the hypocrisy of caring for this animal but paying for others to be killed. So for those viewers who haven't seen that interview or read about the epiphany you've had, would you mind talking to us about it? And obviously it's quite sort of, it's not a pleasant thing to bring up, but I think it's good to sort of connect with people who are talking about veganism.
Of course. So about 7 years ago, I was experiencing a lot of health problems, a lot of bloating, pain, skin issues, joint issues. And I'd seen so many different doctors and health professionals, and nobody could really tell me what was wrong with me. And around that time, I think it was when Netflix first launched in the UK, and I discovered all these wonderful documentaries like Forks Over Knives, Food Inc., Fat, Sick and Nearly Dead by Joe Cross. What else did I watch? Oh, there was just so many, and I just kind of, overloaded on all this content really to try and understand what could be wrong with me. And a friend recommended the alkaline diet, which really is quite simply just consuming more greens and cutting back on all processed foods. And I started getting more greens into my diet, but then we actually thought about doing a juice fast, where it's not really a fast, you just consume fruit and vegetable juices over an extended period. I think we did about 5 or 6 days. And we did about 5 different types of juices every single day. Then there are mixture of fruit and vegetable juices. And I did them, and within a few days, I started to feel so much more energy, and I felt more alive than I'd really ever felt before. And I just felt really great, like in comparison to kind of, a few weeks before, where my energy levels were really low. I was struggling to get out of bed in the mornings. And I felt excellent. And after that kind of process, we finished the juice fast and went to a friend's birthday party at a local pub, and we sat down and had a big juicy beef burger, and I remember vividly kind of getting halfway through the burger and feeling a bit sick and just not really, and I didn't really enjoy it, and I kind of realized, I think at that time, that my sort of love affair with meat was coming to an end. And not long after that, another friend recommended the documentary Earthlings, which is a really powerful kind of indictment as to how animals are treated by human beings on Earth today. And that really shook me, because what was really curious about that is that I grew up around animals. I had many companion animals like cats and dogs and mice and chickens and geese and all these different animals really I grew up with, which I adored. I loved all of them, but I never really thought about the animals that were on my plate, or the animals that had to die for me to eat. I didn't really make that emotional connection, but that film really unlocked that realization within me that there are animals have to endure a lot of suffering to end up on our plates. And that really kind of created quite a sort of shift within me, after watching it. I kind of remember feeling really like horrified and kind of terrified about what we have become as a species. On that very day, there was a screech outside my house, and I obviously, ran to the front door, went outside, and there was a mum and her kids in a people carrier, a little sort of people carrier that had just gone down the cul-de-sac near our house. And I went and ran over to her, and she was screaming and crying, and the kids were all screaming and crying, and she just kept saying, "The cat, the cat, the cat." I looked back, and our neighbor's lovely, beautiful white Persian cat was sort of flapping around on the ground. Ran over to her or them, I can't remember she or he, but ran over to them, and there was just this huge big pool of blood all around them. And the cat was flapping around in this blood, and I went over to sort of like grab the cat to try and stop it from, it was just obviously going into shock. And, you know, people always say, you know, if an animal is suffering, that we should put it out of its misery, that we should end its suffering. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't break the animal's neck, or, you know, or do whatever you have to do to kill the animal and take its life. And you know, that moment always sort of sticks with me, because I'd seen Earthlings, and I'd learned about what animals have to endure. I'd learned about a lot more about the slaughter process. I'd learned about animals in fur and animals in fashion, and how they're all kind of just brutalized and abused. And that all that stuff was going on in my head really at that time. And I just thought to myself, if I can't take the life of this animal, why am I paying somebody else to do it for me? You know, and it was at that time really I decided that, you know, I would kind of dedicate my life to educating people, or at least working as hard as I can to get people off animal products and educate people about the horrors of the animal agriculture industry, but also other industries as well, you know, and how we as human beings kind of have decided to place ourselves above these other sentient beings, and cause so much suffering, and for what, you know, for a jacket or a coat or a sandwich or whatever. So that's a story in a nutshell. It's you know, it's something that I think will always stay with me for the rest of my life. And I think that's, for me, one of the most important aspects of veganism, and I think that's what keeps people vegan, is that connection to animals, and that realization that we don't need to kill them, we don't need to cause any kind of suffering to live as vibrant human beings. So
well, thank you very much. I know obviously we sort of, you would be telling that it's not a very pleasant story to tell, but I think these sorts of things do sort of connect with the viewers. With the Jill Robinson interview I've just done, which I've just aired a few weeks ago, everybody was talking about the bear in the cage she was talking about, you know. So I think it could be that somebody who's transitioning to vegan or thinking about veganism right now, watching this, and you sort of recounting that story, is the thing which makes them go vegan, you know. So thank you for doing that. On a slightly different note now, you've got over 1.2 million followers on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter and Facebook, and you've achieved it in a relatively short space of time. So do you ever look at yourself?
It's actually 2.2 million now.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah, that number, where did we see that number? I need to update it. I think there's a lot of stats on our website and stuff which are like, you know, almost a year old. It's just crazy how quickly it's exploded.
You're going too quick.
Yeah.
That's why you haven't got a minute's peace.
Yeah.
So do you ever look at yourself and wonder, like, how did you get here, you know? And what also made you decide to do YouTube rather than any social media first?
Yeah, so to answer your first question, is do I have a question how we got here? No, because I've had the most amazing support from so many incredible people. The team that are around us, who are very dedicated, they are, you know, the reason that we're here. You know, Klaus and I have poured every ounce of heart and soul into this. I believe that's why we are the way we are, and why we've got to the size we've got to. Because it's been, you know, I met Klaus 5 years ago, and Klaus started the YouTube channel because he wanted to kind of create a bird's eye view over what was going on in the plant-based scene, in the vegan scene. And then him and I met about maybe 13 months after that, and we met at an event called Vegan Futures, which was a kind of like TED Talks for vegans, and we hit it off. You know, he's I don't know if you ever met him. He's a curious lad. He's sort of like quite peculiar, but in the most awesome way. You know, he's obviously, like me, very much you know, a bit of a geek, and kind of loves technology and loves, you know, social media, and kind of really saw an opportunity to share this message with a lot of people, because, you know, without social media we wouldn't be able to reach so many people. We wouldn't have had that opportunity. If it was sort of 20 years ago, we wouldn't have had the money to be able to do lots of advertising, and we would have had to have used traditional media. And so the YouTube channel was the kind of technology that allowed us to reach a lot of people quite quickly, because as we developed and as we got support, we were able to pull in more, just, you know, editors and writers and script support. And then obviously Klaus then also started the film he directs every year called Vegan 20, well, it's called Vegan, well, it's just called Vegan, and then it's like Vegan 2015, 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20, which is our last one we released in December. And that's kind of been the kind of jewel in our crown when it comes to YouTube. And You know, YouTube is such a great way to create conversation, because anyone anywhere can upload a video, and you don't need any skills. You can just film something on your iPhone, and just upload that video, and there you go. You know, you could reach 100 million people with a video that goes viral, and you don't need any skills at all, really. You just need your voice.
Yeah. So what do you think is unique about plant-based news? And also, do you think it's because you're called plant-based rather than vegan? Do you think the word vegan has not necessarily negative connotations, but different connotations?
I would say that 7 years ago, when we first went vegan, it did have a lot of negative connotations. Veganism as a lifestyle and philosophy is obviously defined as an animal rights kind of social justice movement that aims to keep animals out of the food system, out of the the fashion world, out of technology. But vegan, the word vegan has become very associated with fashion and makeup and beauty and food and cake and all these incredible words that were never associated with something like vegan. When if you had cake, you always assumed it would have milk or eggs in it, at the very least. Or if you bought fashion, you would often have something with leather, or you'd have something with fur, or you'd have something with silk. I think that using the word plant-based, the idea was to make it more open and more broad. The plant-based lifestyle really is about like living a conscious lifestyle. Unfortunately, not everyone wants to be vegan. Not everyone wants to be associated with animal rights or have anything to do with the social justice movement. So plant-based gives people the option to stop eating animals, but maybe occasionally they may have some animal products. And I know there are some vegans out there who say, well, veganism shouldn't be a part-time thing, that we should commit to 100%. And that is true. I think that people should commit to it. There is no excuse not to live a vegan life, especially in the Western world, where you have access to all the fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, legumes out there. But we're dealing with human beings here. We can't force people to make these changes. People have to sorry, I got a really itchy nose today. Can edit that bit out. We're dealing with human beings whose psychology is often one of quite a stubborn nature. Nobody likes to be told what to do, how to live, how to eat, how to shop. But I think if we can show people how tasty and delicious and fun and sexy and beautiful and interesting and inspiring it can be, it's going to be more appealing to people, right?
Yeah.
I'd love to be able to stand on every street corner in every city across the entire planet, screaming at people, saying, please change, we need to change, not just for the sake of the animals, but for the sake of our entire planet and the future of our species. But it doesn't work. Creating change in this way, where people have to change what they eat every day, is so ingrained in our culture, so ingrained in people's emotions, that we have to do it through the eyes or through smell or through food or through taste. That's my opinion. And I think that's why plant-based news has got to the size. I think that's why plant-based news got to the size that it has, is because we're showing people the way without it being preachy or aggressive. Now, there's nothing wrong with being preachy and aggressive when it's necessary. I think that it's important to speak with conviction and clarity on these things, because if we don't, I think people won't believe us, they won't listen to us. But I think at the same time, we can be firm and direct with people without being aggressive and rude or arrogant. And I think this is the difference. Like, plant-based news is clear, it's transparent, it's credible, it's accountable, it's also regulated. We're the only vegan media company in the whole world to be independently regulated, which means that we have a code of conduct, we have a code of ethics, that if we make a mistake, that we make a very clear note that we've made the mistake. In any of our articles, we post corrections. And if people want to make a complaint, we have a proper process, because we want people to trust us. And so that's really important to us.
So with plant-based news being international, and looking around all the countries that you reach, do you see some of them making good progress? Do you think there's anything in the UK that we can learn?
So we look at the statistics on our platforms, and there are so many countries on the list. I think almost every single country on earth has at least a few people reading our content, looking at our content, and that blows me away that there's so many people who are interested in what we're doing. The UK and the US are the biggest when it comes to traffic. I think that's mainly because of the conversation being the loudest here. We're more organized. The UK is probably, in my opinion, the top of anywhere in the whole world, because we're a small country. Before the pandemic, we had lots of events. We used to get together a lot more. The vegan community is more engaged with each other. There's a lot of connections, a lot of friendships that are built and formed because we're a small country. It's easy for us to reach each other. It's easy for us to travel to nearby cities, to veg fests and vegan campouts and things like that. So we have that advantage in this country where, because we're an island, we're small, we can, network. In the US, it's really spread out. People are, it's a huge, giant country, 139 million people, I think it is. And it's harder for people to form those bonds and those connections and maintain them. Other parts of the world, it is a lot harder because I think of cultural reasons. Food culture is much more powerful, has a much more powerful grip over people's desire to eat meat. In places like India and in Africa, where sort of traditions around food, and even in Europe, I think across continental Europe, cultural traditions are much more kind of embedded in people's lives. In the UK, our food culture in many ways has long since been lost. Like, we don't have a food culture. We take on everybody else's food culture because we've kind of lost our own, because this island has been a mix of so many people from different cultures for thousands of years. And that's a good thing, I think. That's what makes it such an amazing place, because it's so diverse, and it gives us the opportunity to be, ever changing, right? But the rest of the world is slow because of that, because of those strong cultural connections to eating meat and killing animals, and it being such an important part to them of their life and their culture. So challenging that is a long road. It's really difficult. I've got a lot of friends who live in India who often talk to me about their frustration for the culture and the desire to sort of consume milk, and how eating cheese and paneer and milk is so ingrained in the culture. It's very hard to talk to their grandparents or their mum or their dad about not doing this, because they actually consider it an insult. In the UK, like, not eating cheese is, maybe it's a bit of an addiction, but it's not a cultural insult not to eat cheese.
No, it's definitely not. We often get accused of caring only about the animals as vegans and animal rights activists, but we say that it's essentially about oppression. Obviously, it's non-humans in this case, but how interlinked do you feel is the animal rights movements or with other anti-oppression movements?
They're completely intertwined, even though there are many vegans who would suggest that veganism is just about animals. Humans are animals. Whether we like it or not, we are a species of great ape. We're an animal. We've decided to place ourselves above all other sentient beings on this planet because of our arrogance. But ultimately, we are animals, and I believe veganism is about total liberation of all sentient beings, humans and non-humans. We have to create a world where human beings can live free of oppression, of violence, of torture, and animals exactly the same. That whether you're gay or straight or bisexual or transgender or black or white or Indian or whatever, wherever you are, wherever you're from, you have the right to live a life free of oppression, free of violence, and free of persecution. The animals are the same, so the two are entwined. Our motivations for wanting to, our motivations for kind of building a vegan world is compassion. The whole reason we don't want, sorry about that. The whole reason we don't want animals to suffer is because we care about the suffering of those animals. We empathize. We don't want to see more suffering. So if we can extend that, sorry, telephones everywhere. If we don't want to see other beings suffer like non-human animals, then why would we not extend that to our fellow human beings? So I think that it's really, really important that the intersections between veganism also extend outwards into things like racism and sexism and homophobia and transphobia. That if we really truly care about the well-being of non-human animals, then it makes sense that we should care about the well-being of humans. Unfortunately, that's not the case most of the time.
No.
No. You would assume that if people are vegan, then they're also not going to be racist or sexist or homophobic. That's not the case at all. People are very selective in their compassion. They're selective in their concern. And I think that just comes from the way we are as people. We only kind of connect with where we place our minds. If we just want to focus on animal rights and we want to forget about everything else, and many people are quite capable of doing that, but
yeah,
I can't sort of live my life thinking about just animals and not think about the suffering of human beings and the exploitation and sort of other isms, the other oppressive systems that go on. But there's only so many hours in the day. It's not possible to work on all these social justice movements at the same time simultaneously. But it is possible to care about racism, to care about sexism, to care about homophobia and transphobia and all these other oppressivisms. It is possible to be connected to all of it. Obviously, you have to place your time where you feel you can bring the most value. So that's what's important.
Well, one of the things that obviously we get quite a lot is you don't care about humans. You know, there's homeless people and everything. But as our group, what we do is we do community work as well. So we do, you know, like litter picking, weeding and stuff in the area, just so people see. And obviously, we're wearing our animal rights jackets, so people know that we're in animal rights groups. But we're doing stuff for the community, for humans. Obviously, it's helping wildlife as well when we're doing that. But also we did a vegan food collection for a food bank over Christmas as well. So it's a kind of, again, it's like you said, it's just like all oppression. It's not just about, it's like the non-human animals and you know, like we are exactly the same.
Sorry, I'm just trying to get rid of Klaus. He keeps trying to call me. Sorry about that.
You're a
I
popular
agree.
man.
I think when it comes to like caring about other human beings, we have to develop that sense of compassion and not become misanthropic, because if we start becoming human hating and we start talking about humans, you know, ironically, I do often say sometimes humans behave in parasitic ways, that our species as a whole, from a grand scheme of things, is behaving like a parasite. But I don't necessarily mean that, you know, humans as individuals are parasites. I mean, our culture is parasitic. You know, we exist on this world, we're consuming it from the inside out. We're not nourishing this planet. We're not rebuilding and reinvigorating the environment. We're literally tearing it to shreds and selling it. And I think that goes for the way we treat each other as well. We have to learn to start bringing all people into the conversation. You know, I don't think there should be any homeless people at all in a country like the UK, which is such a wealthy country. There's so much money in this country that there has to be solutions to end poverty, to end homelessness. We should not be having, to me, it's an embarrassment to have that kind of, you know, deprivement in a country like the UK, or even the US as well. The US is even worse. Like there's 50 million people who live with food security issues in America, which means they don't know where their next meal is coming from.
Well, I used to work in a school. I mean, I retired last year, and in April last year, and I saw exactly the food insecurity you're talking about. It was just horrendous, you know, and it wasn't a particularly, I mean, it was a deprived area as it's part of the government statistics and their definition, but you know, kind of people, you know, not knowing where the next food is coming from, coming to school with no breakfasts, no, you know, it is awful. It's and you're right, it is an embarrassment. You know, we're talking about the world sort of judging us. You know, we're judging them for their animal rights, but they're judging us for our human rights.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as activists, we do see awful things, and some of which are very hard to get out of our heads once we've seen them. So how do you look after your own mental health and well-being?
By not looking at animal suffering all the time. That I look at it when I need to look at it, when I need to create a piece of content. I'm fortunate enough not to have to edit content like that all the time. And I can imagine people who do have to, like Joanne MacArthur, who's an incredible animal rights photographer. You know, she experiences factory farming firsthand on a regular basis, and she's talked about how she's experienced burnout, emotional burnout, empathy burnout. I think one of the key things for me in Joanne's is the same as practicing love and kindness, which is a sort of Buddhist technique of really nourishing your heart, really, and yourself as a person, seeing what you're doing as you know, it is a form of a sacrifice. You know, we are sacrificing our own mental health, our physical health, to drag humanity into the 21st century and just drag us away from our sort of Neanderthal kind of ancestry, right? Because I think killing and eating animals is from our Neanderthal ancestry. We have to evolve as species, and I think part of that is learning to educate others and spread this message of compassion, right? And sometimes you can see why people think veganism is like a religion, because it can feel like that sometimes. We don't have a goddess or a god, but you know, our focus really is compassion. It's like teaching others about compassion through how we view animals. But when we see and experience trauma, we do go through second-degree trauma, where Dr. Melanie Joy talks about it a lot. She's this incredible psychologist. She talks about how our brains actually identify with that traumatic experience, and it can cause depression and misanthropy and sleepless nights and all kinds of horrific mental issues with people. And I think it's about knowing your limits and about creating opportunity and space for yourself to disconnect and, you know, focus on doing regular meditations and doing mindfulness practices and unplugging from social media regularly. And, you know, if you are an activist and you campaign online, focus on the other positive aspects of veganism too. You know, there are lots of wonderful things about the lifestyle and the culture that is really life affirming too. There's lots of wonderful stories about animals being rescued and set free. There's loads of sanctuaries with non-human animals with the most wonderful personalities, you know, sheep and cows and chickens and pigs that are smart and intelligent. And look at the animals, the ones that are still alive, and remember them and see their lives and see the beauty and wonder that they give us. That's, I think, what keeps me sane and gives me the joy to keeps the joy alive, really, that helps me keep doing this, because you know, there are so many billions of animals suffering alone in these horrific factory farms. And Joey and I often talk about this as them being like children. You know, the animals of our world are the children of our world, because they are childlike beings. They don't understand what's going on. They don't have an awareness. They obviously have an awareness of their surroundings. They're sentient like us, but they don't truly have the cognitive capacity to understand why they have been imprisoned, why they have been captured. And I think, you know, always remembering how we have the privilege to be able to share their message, and as painful as it can be sometimes, we have that opportunity, and it's important to look after ourselves if we're going to keep doing it.
Yeah. So what is next for Plant-Based News?
So for this year, not next year, because we're in 2021, really to sort of, you know, more than anything else, survive this year, but also to continue to grow. We want to expand our team. We're still really only a team of 4 full-time people, 5 now, I think. Yeah, we'll just take another person, so 5 full-time. And our kind of focus really is to try and expand. You know, we're doing our best, try and reach as many people as possible, get as many people as possible off animal products through just sharing the news and educating them, working with organizations like Veganuary and $1 Million Vegan and a few other platforms, and just working also with some vegan brands as well, some plant-based brands, to try and help them reach more customers. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, if people can go to a supermarket and they can get all the products they need, they don't need to buy animal products. They don't need to consume animals. So we just want to help more companies and brands reach more people and be more successful. Because ultimately, if there are a lot more vegan brands out there, I think there's more opportunities for people to choose products that don't involve suffering of some sort.
Yeah. Thank you very much for that. You sound as if you're just like 100 miles an hour all the time.
yeah, absolutely. It is. I'll get to rest, you know, in a few years, hopefully.
What pandemic? You've just kept on working on me through. Well, thank you very much anyway. It's been really, really lovely to talk to you. And would like everybody at NEA would like to wish you and everybody at Plant-Based News all the best for 2021 and onwards. So thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us. We do really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on. My pleasure.